She locked me in her ship, then whispered, "You're mine now." The beacon's call Marcus Kane had salvaged enough derelicts in the outer rim to know when something felt wrong. The distress beacon pulsing from the massive alien cruiser shouldn't have been broadcasting on human frequencies, and it definitely shouldn't have been drifting this far beyond charted space. But credits were credits, and his ship Razor's Edge was running on fumes and borrowed time. "Just another milk run," he muttered, maneuvering his battered salvage vessel toward the sleek obsidian hull. The alien ship was enormous, easily 10 times the size of his own craft, its surface rippling with patterns that seemed to shift when he wasn't looking directly at them. The docking bay opened without his request, revealing an interior that glowed with soft bioluminescent lighting. Marcus hesitated. In 15 years of salvage work, he'd learned to trust his instincts, and right now they were screaming at him to turn around. But his fuel gauge and empty stomach argued otherwise. "Hello?" His voice echoed through corridors that curved in impossible geometries. The ship's architecture defied human understanding. Walls that flowed like liquid metal, floors that seemed to pulse with their own heartbeat. Emergency lighting cast everything in an ethereal blue glow. He found her in what might have been a command center. Though the controls resembled organic growths more than technology, she was humanoid but clearly alien. Tall and elegant, with skin that held a faint luminescence. Intricate biometallic tattoos traced patterns across her arms and face, pulsing with the same rhythm as the ship's walls. Her eyes were the most striking feature, deep violet with flecks of silver that moved like trapped starlight. "You came," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated in his chest. She spoke perfect English, though her lips barely moved. "I wasn't certain humans would respond to the beacon. Lady, are you hurt? What happened to your crew?" Marcus kept his hand near his sidearm, though something told him it would be useless here. She smiled, an expression both beautiful and predatory. "I am Zaravel of the Nixari Dominion, and you, brave salvager, have just saved my life." "Great. Then let's get you to the nearest station so I can—" The ship shuddered, and Marcus felt something fundamental change. The air grew thicker, charged with energy that made his skin tingle. When he tried to activate his comlink, it produced only static. "I'm afraid that won't be possible," Zaravel said, rising from her position with fluid grace. "By answering my beacon, by entering my ship willingly, you have invoked the Keth Miran, the life bond right of my people." The what now? Marcus backed toward the entrance, but the corridor had sealed itself. Smooth metal had grown across the opening like living tissue. "You saved my life, Marcus Kane." How did she know his name? By our laws, by our very biology, that creates a debt that can only be repaid through absolute service. You are now my bonded mate, my protector, my possession. The ship's systems came alive around them. Displays flickered to life, showing star charts of regions Marcus had never seen. The vessel began to move, acceleration smooth as silk. "This is insane," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I just answered a distress call. That doesn't make me your property." Zaravel approached him slowly, her tattoos brightening with each step. When she was close enough to touch, she whispered, "Perhaps not by human understanding, but we are no longer in human space, Marcus Kane. And by the laws that bind my people, laws written into our very DNA, you are mine now." Her hand touched his chest and he felt a strange warmth spread through him. "Do not fear this bond. In time you will understand its necessity. There are things hunting me, ancient things that your kind cannot imagine. But you, with your wonderfully chaotic human mind, may be the key to both our survival." The ship leaped into hyperspace, carrying them toward unknown destinations and darker truths. Part 2. Bonds of Starlight. 3 days into his unwilling captivity, Marcus had mapped every accessible section of Zaravel's ship. The vessel was a masterpiece of biotechnology, walls that responded to touch, corridors that rearranged themselves based on need, and a central AI that communicated through colors and musical tones rather than words. It was also completely escape-proof. "Your agitation is disrupting the ship's harmony," Zaravel said, finding him in what he'd started calling the observation deck. Through the transparent walls, hyperspace flowed like liquid fire. "Sit. Let me explain." "I've heard enough explanations." Marcus kept his distance, having learned that prolonged contact with her triggered strange sensations, visions of alien worlds and emotions that weren't his own. "Just tell me how to get home." "Home." She tasted the word like something bitter. "The Nexari have no concept of home as you understand it. We are nomads, wanderers between the stars. Our ships are our territories, our crews our nations." Her tattoos dimmed as she settled onto a chair that molded itself to her form. "I was not always alone on this vessel. The whispered dream once carried my entire court, 50 souls bound to my service. They died protecting me from the harbingers." Harbingers? Ancient. Machines left by the first civilization to achieve true immortality. They were meant to preserve their creator's consciousness forever, but something went wrong. Now they roam the galaxy, converting all sentient life into components of their collective. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's temperature. "And they're after you specifically?" Zaravel's laugh held no humor. "I possess something they want. A genetic memory passed down through my bloodline for 1,000 generations. The location of the Harbinger's original world, and the weapon that can destroy them." She stood, moving to the observation port. "My people exiled me for refusing to share this knowledge. They believed negotiation was possible, that the Harbingers could be reasoned with. I know better. I've seen what remains of civilizations that tried to bargain with them. So why haven't you destroyed them yourself?" "Because the weapon requires 2 minds working in perfect harmony. One Nexari, one from a species immune to our telepathic influence. In the entire galaxy, only humans possess such immunity." She turned to face him, her starlight eyes intense. "The life bond between us isn't just cultural, Marcus. It's a biological imperative, designed to create the mental link necessary to operate ancient Nexari technology." Marcus processed this, his engineer's mind working through the implications. "You're saying I'm not really a prisoner, I'm a... what? A living key? You are my complement, my necessary other. And yes, initially you were taken against your will. But the bond grows stronger each day. Soon, you will feel what I feel. Understand what I understand. The distinction between captive and willing partner will become meaningless." As if to prove her point, Marcus felt a sudden flash of emotion, loneliness so profound it took his breath away. For a moment he experienced her isolation, the weight of carrying knowledge that could save or damn the galaxy. "Stop that," he gasped, pressing his hands to his temples. "I cannot control it any more than you can," Zaravel said softly. "The bond seeks balance. Your chaotic human emotions are already affecting me in ways I never expected." She approached him slowly, cautiously. "I know you hate me for this choice I forced upon you, but if we fail, if the Harbingers claim my memories, every world in this galaxy will fall, including Earth. How long do we have?" "They've been following my trail for 3 cycles, perhaps a week before they locate us." Marcus stared out at the flowing hyperspace, weighing his options. Stay angry and possibly doom billions, or accept this bizarre situation and maybe, just maybe, help save the galaxy. "All right," he said finally. "All right. But if we're doing this, we do it as partners, not as owner and property. I need to understand everything, the weapon, the Harbingers, whatever you're not telling me." Zaravel's tattoos brightened, and he felt a wave of relief that might have been her own. "Then let us begin your education, Marcus Kane. There is much to learn, and time grows short." Memories of war. The bio-neural interface looked like something out of a nightmare. Organic cables that writhed with their own life, connecting to nodes that would pierce directly into Marcus's skull. He'd agreed to partner with Zaravel, but This was testing his resolve. "The knowledge transfer will show you what the harbingers truly are," she explained, her fingers dancing over controls that resembled crystalline flowers. "But it will also begin the final phase of our bonding. Once completed, our minds will be permanently linked." "Define permanently." "If I die, you die. If you die—" She hesitated. "I have never heard of a Nexari surviving the death of their bondmate." Marcus studied her face, looking for deception. In the 4 days since their conversation, he'd begun to recognize her tells, the way her tattoos dulled when she was uncertain, how her voice took on harmonics when she was afraid. Right now, she was terrified. "You've never done this before," he realized. "The life bond is ancient tradition, but rarely practiced in modern times. Most Nexari find willing partners through courtship rituals that can take decades. I had no such luxury." She moved closer, her movements carrying that fluid grace he'd grown accustomed to. "Marcus, you should know. Among my people, I am considered a radical. My refusal to surrender the weapon's location has branded me a terrorist. If we succeed in destroying the harbingers, I can never return to Nexari space. And if we fail, then there will be no Nexari space to return to." He settled into the neural interface chair, trying to ignore how the biocables reached for him with obvious hunger. "Do it." The connection was like drowning in someone else's dreams. Marcus found himself experiencing Zaravel's memories as if they were his own, soaring through the crystal spires of her homeworld, learning combat techniques from masters whose names were poetry, studying in vast libraries where knowledge was stored in living coral that sang its secrets. Then came the darker memories. The first harbinger attack on a border colony, ships arriving to find every living thing converted into metallic components, their consciousness uploaded into the collective. Children turned into processing nodes. Artists transformed into computational matrices. He saw the great debate in the Nexari Senate, Zaravel standing alone as she argued for immediate military action. Her exile, her gathering of loyal followers, their desperate flight toward the ancient weapon that might save them all. The final memory was the attack on the Whispered Dream. Harbinger vessels emerging from dimensional folds, their hulls covered in the faces of their victims. The battle as Zaravel's court fought and died, buying her time to escape. Her last glimpse of her mentor, Captain Rylos, as he was consumed by nanites and transformed into another Harbinger drone. Marcus gasped as the connection ended, tears streaming down his face, tears for losses that weren't even his own. Zaravel was sobbing beside him, her composure finally cracking. "Now you understand," she whispered. "Now you know what we face." But the knowledge transfer had worked, both ways. Marcus felt her surprise as she experienced his memories, growing up on the mining station Titan's Rest, losing his parents to a reactor breach, the crushing loneliness that had driven him to a life among the stars. His own exile, self-imposed but no less painful. "We're both running from something," he said, understanding flooding through him. "Both carrying burdens too heavy for one person." She nodded, unable to speak. The bond between them had deepened, and he could feel her emotions as clearly as his own. But there was something else, a new awareness of the ship around them, as if the Whispered Dream itself was alive and watching. "The ship responds to bonded pairs," Zaravel explained, noticing his confusion. "Now that our link is complete, you'll be able to interface with her systems directly." As if summoned by her words, the walls around them lit up with displays, star charts, sensor readings, and something that made Marcus's blood run cold, a proximity alarm. 3 ships, their designs unlike anything in the Galactic databases, were approaching fast. "They found us," Zaravel breathed. The Harbingers had arrived. Marcus felt her fear but also her determination. Through their bond, he understood that this was always how it would end, in a final confrontation with the galaxy's greatest threat. But now they had a chance, slim though it might be. "Where's this weapon?" he asked, his voice steady despite the terror running through both their minds. "In the dead system of Corvallis Prime, 3 days at maximum speed. Then let's run." The ship leaped forward as if it had been waiting for his command. and Marcus realized that whatever happened next, they would face it together. Part 4. The Weapon's Heart. The Corvallis system was a graveyard of worlds, their surfaces scarred by weapons that had boiled away oceans and cracked continents. As the Whispered Dream navigated through the debris field that had once been a thriving civilization, Marcus felt the weight of cosmic history pressing down on him. The Corvani were the first to resist the Harbingers, Zaravel explained, her voice tight with concentration as she piloted them toward the system's dead star. They built the Nexus weapon as their final gambit, a device capable of severing the quantum entanglement that binds the Harbinger collective. Through their deepening bond, Marcus could feel her accessing genetic memories passed down through 100 generations. The knowledge burned in her mind like fire, threatening to consume her if held too long. There, she gasped, pointing toward a structure hidden in the star's corona. The Nexus. It was impossible. A crystalline construct the size of a city, somehow surviving in temperatures that should have vaporized any known material. Ancient Corvani script covered its surface, glowing with their own inner light. How do we get inside? That thing sitting in stellar fire. The Whispered Dream was built for this purpose, Zaravel said, her tattoos blazing as she interfaced with the ship's systems. My ancestors designed her shields to withstand a star's embrace. The ship dove toward the solar construct, her hull shimmering with protective energies. Marcus felt the heat even through the environmental systems, but the bond between him and Zaravel seemed to strengthen under pressure. Her pain became his pain, her determination his own. They docked with the Nexus through an airlock that opened at their approach, recognizing something in their joined consciousness. Inside, the structure was a maze of crystal corridors and chambers filled with impossible geometries. At its heart waited the weapon, not the massive device Marcus had expected, but a simple crystalline sphere no larger than his fist. This is it? He asked, staring at the innocuous object floating in its containment field. The Nexus doesn't destroy through force, Zaravel explained, her voice echoing strangely in the crystal chamber. It severs connections, breaks the bonds that hold the Harbinger collective together, but activating it requires perfect synchronization between two minds. One to target the collective's quantum signature, one to trigger the severance. She reached for the sphere, and Marcus felt a jolt of energy run through their bond. The weapon pulsed with recognition, responding to their joined consciousness. The Harbingers are already here, Zaravel said, her eyes wide with alarm. Through the chamber's crystalline walls, they could see 3 Harbinger vessels emerging from hyperspace. Their hulls were a nightmarish fusion of technology and biological matter covered in the faces of their victims. How long to activate the weapon? Minutes, but they'll board us before then. As if summoned by her words, alarms began sounding throughout the Nexus. The ancient structure's defenses were coming online, but they were fighting technology 10,000 years more advanced. There's another way, Marcus said, an idea forming as he studied the weapon's interface. Through their bond, he could feel Zaravel's genetic memories more clearly now. Instructions passed down through generations, waiting for this moment. What are you thinking? The weapon needs 2 minds, but it doesn't need 2 bodies. He placed his hand on the sphere beside hers, feeling the power thrumming within. If we fully merge our consciousness, become one entity sharing 2 forms, that's never been attempted. The psychological trauma could destroy us both. The Harbinger ships were closing fast, their boarding parties already launching. Marcus could see the mechanical horrors they faced, beings that had once been sentient, creatures now converted into extensions of the collective will. Zaravel, he said softly, using her full name for the first time. Look at me. Her starlight eyes met his, and in that moment, Marcus made his choice. Instead of fighting the bond between them, he embraced it completely. He opened his mind to her, letting her see every memory, every fear, every moment of loneliness that had shaped him. She gasped as their consciousness merged, 2 separate beings, becoming something greater than the sum of their parts. Through her, he felt the weight of Nexari culture, the beauty of their art, the tragedy of their exodus. Through him, she experienced human determination, the stubborn refusal to surrender even when facing impossible odds. The weapon responded to their unified will, its surface blazing with energy that outshone the dead star around them. Across space, the Harbinger vessels stopped their advance, their collective intelligence recognizing the threat too late. "Now," they said in perfect unison, their voices harmonizing in ways that human and Nexari throats were never meant to achieve. The Nexus weapon discharged, sending ripples through quantum space that severed every connection binding the Harbinger. Collective. Across the galaxy, machines that had terrorized civilizations for millennia simply stopped, their artificial consciousness scattered to the void. In the crystal chamber, Marcus and Zaravel collapsed, their merged consciousness slowly separating back into two distinct beings. They were changed. He could feel her thoughts at the edge of his mind, just as she could sense his emotions. But they were still themselves. "Is it over?" Marcus asked, his voice hoarse. Zaravel smiled, her tattoos settling into a peaceful golden glow. "It's over." Part 5. New Horizons. 6 months after the Harbinger War ended, as the Galactic historians would later call it, Marcus stood on the observation deck of the Whispered Dream, watching Earth grow larger in the viewport. His homeworld looked smaller than he remembered, a blue marble against the star-drunk sky. "Having second thoughts?" Zaravel asked, joining him at the transparent wall. The bond between them had evolved over the past months, becoming less a chain of obligation and more a bridge of understanding. They could still feel each other's emotions, share memories at will, but the overwhelming merger of consciousness had faded to something more manageable. "Not second thoughts," Marcus said, slipping his arm around her waist. "Just processing." The return journey had been a revelation. They'd stopped at dozens of worlds, helping coordinate relief efforts as civilizations emerged from the shadow of Harbinger occupation. Zaravel had been hailed as a hero by her people, the exile's return marking a new era for the Nexari Dominion. "The Senate has officially pardoned me," she said, her voice carrying a note of amusement. "They're calling me the savior of the galaxy. Rather melodramatic, don't you think?" "Better than terrorist and exile," Marcus pointed out. They'd received offers from a dozen governments, positions of honor, massive rewards, entire systems offered as gifts. But they'd turned them all down. The galaxy was vast, and there were still places that needed exploration, mysteries that needed solving. "The Terran Council is expecting us," Zaravel said, checking the ship's chronometer. "Your species leaders are quite eager to establish formal relations with the Nexari. Humanity's good at that, making friends after the crisis is over." Marcus watched a cargo shuttle rise from the surface, its primitive chemical engines leaving a trail of vapor. Strange to think that a few months ago humans had no idea aliens existed. "Your species adapted remarkably quickly. Most civilizations require generations to accept first contact." The past months had seen unprecedented cooperation between species. The threat of the Harbingers had united the galaxy in ways that diplomacy alone never could have achieved. Trade routes were opening, cultural exchanges beginning, and technology sharing that would accelerate development for everyone. But perhaps the most significant change was personal. The bond between Marcus and Zaravel had become something neither of their species had expected, a true partnership based on choice rather than biological imperative. Other Nexari had begun seeking human companions, drawn by the unique mental compatibility their species shared. "There's something I need to tell you," Zaravel said, her tone suddenly serious. "The Nexari Council has made an offer. They want us to lead the new exploration corps, joint missions to chart the unknown regions, establish contact with civilizations we've never encountered." Marcus considered this, feeling her excitement through their bond. The idea of exploring the galaxy together, of being the bridge between human and Nexari cultures, appealed to him more than he wanted to admit. "What did you tell them?" "That I needed to discuss it with my partner first." She smiled, the expression transforming her alien features into something achingly beautiful. We are partners now, aren't we? True partners, not just bonded by ancient ritual. Marcus turned to face her fully, seeing his reflection in her starlight eyes. Zaravel of the Nexari Dominion, would you like to see the universe with a sarcastic human salvage pilot? Her laugh was like music, carrying harmonics that resonated in his chest. Marcus Kane of Earth, I thought you'd never ask. The whispered dream settled into Earth's orbital traffic pattern, joining the growing fleet of human and alien vessels that now shared the space around his homeworld. But Marcus found himself looking not at the planet below, but at the stars beyond. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, and they had forever to explore it together. So, he said, pulling up the ship's navigation system. Where to first? Zaravel's tattoos brightened as she interfaced with the ship's computers, calling up star charts of unexplored regions. I know of a nebula in the Andromeda spiral where the stars sing to each other, and beyond that a cluster where gravity flows backward. And past that, my beloved Marcus, lies everything we've yet to discover. The whispered dream leaped into hyperspace, carrying them toward new adventures and the infinite possibilities that awaited two souls who had found their perfect complement among the stars. Behind them, Earth spun on in its ancient orbit, no longer alone in the universe. Ahead lay the unknown, vast and welcoming and full of promise. Their story as captive and captor was over. Their story as partners in exploration had just begun.